This episode is sponsored by the Expert Services Directory. Are you a coach, a consultant, speaker, or trainer who wants to sell your services to corporate clients across the UK, but you're booking fewer than 5 qualified sales calls from your lead generation each month? Or finding that all of your inbound inquiries are coming from junior employees in firms who just want to benchmark your pricing rather than actually introduce you to the real decision maker who has the buying power to get you in? And you really want to generate real qualified inbound inquiries from decision makers in organisations around the UK who actually have buying power and want to purchase your services as an external supplier? Well, that is exactly what the Expert Services Directory is for. And if you visit www.expertservicesdirectory.com and sign up now, you can generate qualified corporate leads for 12 whole months by being part of the Expert Services Directory, where we proactively market specialist providers just like you to real decision makers in companies across the UK who are ready to buy from external suppliers. And if you use the code podcast at checkout, all caps, you'll also get a free corporate priorities calendar that you can use to understand exactly what decision makers are prioritizing at each point in the year so that you can create solutions that sell all year round as well. All you have to do is visit www.expertservicesdirectory.com and enter the code podcast, all in capital letters, at the checkout now. Right, let's get back to the episode. Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Okay, welcome to this third episode in May, you lucky ducks. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that we normally produce 2 episodes a month, but of course, May is one of our few 5-week months in the year. So here we are back with another episode for what I am calling Majiggery May. That's not from a sales perspective. It's just that May has been the month that has rushed past. And at the time of recording this, my lovely neighbours, who genuinely are the nicest people in the world, have decided to go ahead with an extension and renovation on their property, which is lovely. But for anybody who has ever lived next door to an extension, even though it is quite far away from our property, it is still noisy. So if you have neighbours who are also going through an extension and you are having to keep all your windows shut, or you are having an extension put in and you're having to deal with all the noise, just know I feel for you. And I am here with you in that. It's also inspiring me never to get an extension done. So, anyone who's a builder listening, I'm not a prime target for business development currently. But in all seriousness, we've got a great episode today. I am really excited about it. I'm going to be talking about the number one sales skill that sales professionals have that I think you can learn from. And because we're all intelligent people, I think this is possibly the most underrated skill that there is in the sales world. And certainly it's one that other people don't think about. So I am quite excited about this episode. I feel like it might be revolutionary. I also feel like there'll be people who listen to this and by the end go, are you kidding? So if that's you, just know that before I recorded it and set out on what is an incredibly sunny day to do this, I did think about it. I did think, will it be something that genuinely changes lives? And I promise you, it actually will. So stick with it, even if in the beginning you think, I don't know that that'll work, or even, I think that's ridiculous. All right. So, as we all know, sales, despite how it might feel to you on any given day, is not actually rocket science. like the work that we're doing with our sales processes, as important as it is, it's not putting people into space and it's not dealing with life or death situations. Instead, it is just a process. Unfortunately, because most of us have been in situations with our sales processes where we're not happy with how they're working out, or where we feel like we've done everything possible that we can and it's still quote unquote not working, or even when we've been in these positions with our sales process where something clicks for a while and then it just doesn't. And so your confidence is temporarily or for a long term knocked. It still doesn't mean that creating sales, generating revenue in your business is the most complex task in the world. And that's really difficult to say to people who are intelligent, because people who are intelligent can find the most complex reasons that their sales process isn't working before I've even stepped in. And annoyingly, for intelligent people like yourself, the most complex reasons that your sales process isn't working are usually not the reason that your sales process isn't producing the results that you want it to. And that's what I want to dig into today is actually, what is the work that professional salespeople are doing to create results on repeat? And how are they creating a skill set for themselves that mean they're able to replicate their good results in any market? That's what we're digging into. But before we get started, I do have to let you know that the Expert Services Directory sponsors this episode. Yay. I've been getting really excited recently about the Expert Services Directory. I've even been sending out some newsletters where we've been talking about some really cool things that are happening as a result of our listees being featured in the Expert Services Directory. And one of the most interesting things of late that has happened, for those of you who don't spend as much time consuming information about sales enablement as I do, which, just as an FYI, is far too much. I need to get a life. But for those of you who haven't been keeping an eye on how the internet at large is operating at the moment, you might have missed the fact that Google have just completely changed the way that people are able to search the internet. And as we all know, decision makers inside corporate organizations are still searching for great coaches, consultants, speakers, trainers, and done-for-you service providers. And what's really interesting is that the most common way for a decision maker inside an organization to find or source an external supplier, like a coach or a consultant, is to go and ask somebody else in the organization, who do you know that can? So who do you know that is a great leadership coach who can support newly promoted leaders? Who do you know that is a great communications expert who's able to come in and help us with a wellness initiative and campaign around it? Who do you know who is really experienced working with people who have neurodiverse conditions that they have or haven't disclosed to the organization so that we can support them differently, right? They will always ask internally first, who do you know? And that can be really, really annoying for decision makers, because actually sometimes when you ask, and we'll all have experienced this at some point, I'm sure, when you ask, who do you know? Often the answer is, oh, no one. Or, oh, I worked with somebody insert time frame ago. I worked with somebody a year ago. I worked with somebody 2 years ago. At a different company I was with, they had this person come in. And then that person who's asked for the referral has to go and see, does that person still exist? Do they still have a business? Do they still do the same thing that they were being praised for 2 years ago? Nobody knows. And it takes a lot of time and energy. And so actually the second place that decision makers go is the internet. But they're not searching in the same way that they used to. They're searching AI tools. They're searching ChatGPT. They're searching Perplexity, Claude. And they're saying, hey, who do you know is the best leadership coach in Cambridge? Who do you know is the best menopause expert in Fife? And they're doing all of these things. And with the way that Google is now changing its search results as well, when they're searching, I was going to say mainstream search engine, but let's face it, Google takes priority for like 90% of searches or something insane. So, when they're searching Google for providers or when they're searching ChatGPT or other AI tools for providers and external suppliers, what's actually coming up are our people inside the expert services directory. Because AI loves to rank you more highly and cite your work if you are featured in a curated, small, and professional environment. And because we limit each category to having 10 suppliers per location, that means that AI is loving recommending all of our speakers, trainers, done-for-you service providers, coaches, and consultants inside the expert services directory to decision makers when they are searching. And that's even without all of the proactive marketing that happens as well. You know, getting featured to over 1,000 decision makers a month if you have a standard listing, and over 2,000 per month with a Directory Plus listing. So if you haven't considered the Expert Services Directory yet, and you are somebody who wants to be generating leads and visibility and brand awareness from a passive perspective, you should get yourself in. Get yourself a listing. Go and check it out. We've got an application process. All you need to do is head across to theexpertservicesdirectory.com/sales, and you will be able to click any button on that page and it'll take you to the application form. And when you fill out that application form, you can tell us why you feel you are an expert fit for the Expert Services Directory, the kinds of benefits that you would bring to our corporate client database, and we can then help you understand if you are going to be somebody who's resonant and if your profile is going to be somebody who's resonant with our corporate client decision maker base as well. So make sure that you go and check it out because it's really good. And like I say, as the queen of I don't know, I wouldn't consider myself the queen of disliking AI. I would consider myself the queen of discernment around AI. I can say that actually I'm loving this new change, Google. Thanks very much. That is really helping all of our listees, and I am thrilled about it. All right, so let's dig into this episode then and talk about what this magical skill is. Now, I know that as soon as I say it, a load of you are going to switch off because you'll be like, this has got to be a joke, Jess. You are an intelligent woman and you cannot be suggesting that this is the top skill that salespeople have. But it genuinely is. So when we talk about a salesperson's job is to consistently create revenue in the business. Their job is solely to focus on what we would call pipeline creating or pipeline generating activities. And that is because their job is to consistently produce that revenue. Now, I think that when you haven't come from a corporate sales background, and I do think that's important because there's a big, big difference between people selling B2B and the way that people sell B2C. The two are very, very different. But if you don't come from that B2B sales background, it can be easy to think that it's like some dark art, to use a Harry Potter phrase. But it can feel like there's this huge mystery around sales. And so what ends up happening is that lots of people will spend a lot of their time thinking about all the different things they can experiment with from a sales perspective. So they'll go and try lots of different methods and, they'll give cold outreach a crack by email. They'll go and do LinkedIn content creation. They will spend hours, after I've just talked about the power of generative engine optimization, there'll be people who listen to this podcast episode and go, I'm going to spend hours on my website and hoping that I can compete with the generative engine optimization of a bunch of other sites who are already, who've already gone ahead of the curve on this and hope that that will work. It happens. And that's not a failing on your part. It is a lack of understanding. Because the great thing about sales and B2B sales is that if you are using a proven strategy, and that's a conversation for a different day, because lots of people out there are selling completely unproven strategies and hoping that they'll work, and people are spending hours testing unproven strategies and hoping that they'll work. But if you're following a proven strategy, literally any proven strategy has the ability to work. Just think about that for a second, because I think it's really important. Literally any proven strategy has the ability to work if it's being done properly. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because so many people say to me, oh yeah, but Jess, you think that cold email outreach is the best thing ever and it just doesn't work. I don't. I don't think that cold email outreach is the best thing ever. I teach 7 different methods of lead generation. I've got clients who are really successful with cold email outreach. I'm really successful with cold email outreach. Equally, I've got clients who are using my networking for lead strategy to the point where they have generated all of their business and all of their revenue in the entirety of 2025 from networking. And I hate networking. I hate leaving my house. I might reconsider that during this whole extension period, but it's that kind of thing. Any proven strategy has the ability to work. The problem is that most people, aren't using proven strategies. They're spending a lot of time testing it themselves or buying strategies that aren't tested from other people, which sets you back considerably. Or B, they're buying the strategy and then they're not using the top skill and the most important skill that professional salespeople have in their arsenal, which is following instructions. I know. You're going to be listening and being like, Jess, you've got to be kidding me. This is such a waste of my 25 minutes. It really isn't. I have worked with thousands, literally thousands, of professional salespeople. And I've worked with literally thousands of coaches and consultants and speakers and trainers and done-for-you service providers. And I often joke about it in perhaps what is quite an unfair way to professional salespeople, because I always say I would rather work with salespeople who don't question anything. I'd rather work with people who honestly just come into work, they want to smile and dial or do whatever they're told, because they make great salespeople. Not because I think that they're not intelligent, not because I think they're not interesting, not because I think that in their normal life outside of work they're not really cool, motivated, driven, smart people, but because the easiest way to get professional salespeople to be successful is to get them to follow instructions. And if they already can do that and they're already focused on that, my job becomes a million times easier. I also work with some of the most intelligent people on the planet. And I don't diminish that at all. Some of the people that I have had the privilege of working with as coaches and consultants and speakers and trainers and done-for-you service providers over the last 10 years has been nothing short of phenomenal. Doctors, clinical psychologists, astronautic experts, huge pools of talent and intellectualism. And it's awesome. And I love the way that their brains work and how they put things together and the cutting edgedness of what they actually do. But you know what trips every single intelligent person up when they use or buy a sales strategy? They don't follow instructions. They think they are, and it's funny because if you are a client of mine, you'll know that at every training session I run, every in-person day that I do, every anything where I have interaction with my clients, people will always say to me, I've read the instructions and then they'll reel something off and I'll be like, oh, so did you do this step? And they're like, oh no, I missed that. And it doesn't matter because we all laugh. There's no judgment around it. It's not oh my gosh, you're the worst person in the world because I wrote out this 17-point checklist and you missed out points 13, 16 and 1. Like, it doesn't matter, but it makes a massive difference. And it's really difficult because intelligent people will read a set of instructions and they'll think, oh yes, I'm following that, because maybe they skim read it. Maybe they took a set of instructions that said send X amount of emails over a period of X weeks. And they went, oh, actually, that just feels a bit uncomfortable to me. So I'm not going to do that, but I am going to send it. Instead of doing it 5 times, I'm going to do it 3 times. Or they will see something that is really different to the way that they've been doing it. So they might be told to send a newsletter that doesn't, shock horror, focus on educational content. And they think, that feels really uncomfortable to me and I just can't, like, I have to give education. So they sort of do what they were supposed to do, but also then they include a bunch of stats and explain the concepts. And by the time that they finished writing the newsletter, it's actually become a huge piece of free consultancy rather than the sales call generating tool it was supposed to be. And because they're intelligent, they know that they maybe haven't done it exactly right, but they think it's good enough. And it isn't. Because the reason that instructions are there are so that we can do really important things like standardize experiences and make sure that we can use metrics effectively, which we can't when somebody changes parts of the process or when somebody changes some of the wording or when somebody uses a template incorrectly. Then suddenly, instead of being able to fulfill its purpose, that thing doesn't work as well as it did. And the person who's trying it ends up feeling even more frustrated and disheartened. So, of course, it does lead us to two things. We have to make sure that people are using proven strategies in the first place. And that means not using a sales strategy that you built out on an AI platform, as much as I'm starting to come around to, thinking some of the things they can do are pretty cool. It also means that when you do invest in something, you should be following the instructions to the letter, not thinking about your comfort level while you're doing it. Because often your comfort level will expand when you start seeing good results from something. But if you don't do it in the right way, you won't see the good results. So then what you're getting is this message that tells you constantly, my sales don't work. I'm not good at sales. And it's just being reinforced consistently. Now, I think one of the other things that I think is so interesting about professional salespeople really owning this skill around following instructions carefully and doing the right work is that they're able to create results in a completely predictable and replicatable way, even if you take them out of their normal environment. And that's really interesting because sometimes we can have success in one market or we can have success selling one thing. You might recognize this if you're really good at selling your entry-level lunch and learn offer. Maybe you've got something that's like £1,000 and you're like, yeah, I can sell loads of that to companies. I can sell loads of this workshop. I can sell loads of this talk. But when it comes to selling the transformational work you actually want to be doing, you really struggle to get them to buy it. Well, that means that your sales process doesn't have or isn't currently able to give you a replicatable, predictable model of success, which means that you can't replicate the success that you have from selling one particular offer or in one particular industry or to one location or to one type of decision maker. You can't replicate it with others. And that's really, really frustrating. Now, in the last 18 years that I've been in sales, have sold goodness knows how many products. I started out in jewelry. I moved into recruitment. I then ended up in the tech space, which was really interesting for everybody. Shout out to the days I had C# for dummies in my desk. And, ultimately I've ended up in this place where I sell a variety of different sales training and sales communication services. And of course, the expert services directory, but we've already talked about that today. So, we know what it is. That means that I've also replicated my success from being a top salesperson in the jewelry industry. I was the top diamond salesperson for an entire region when I was 16. I moved from that into recruitment where I was essentially selling people, just to be super clear, in the recruitment sense of the word, not, the not good senses of selling people, where I became a top performer within my first year in a company that had over 5,000 employees, was operating in over 30 countries. And I became one of the most successful salespeople at every other operating environment that I was in before I started my own business, where I've successfully grown our client base year on year on year on year on year. So I feel like at this point, I'm qualified to say to you, I know what it's like to be able to replicate success in a number of environments. And not even just because I've done it, I've taught loads of people how to do it. In fact, when I was in recruitment, I worked in over 5 different industries, from public sector and not-for-profit. So essentially selling IT program and project managers to public sector and not-for-profit environments, through to financial services, retail, luxury retail, pharmaceuticals, even just when I was in recruitment. And then I taught a load of other people how to do it. And I continue to teach people around the world who are professional salespeople or people just like you who are coaches and consultants and speakers and trainers and done-for-you service providers, to sell in a multitude of environments around the world and to be able to replicate that success, no matter what industry you pick, no matter what offer you're selling, no matter which type of decision maker it's going to. And that's because I'm able to give people a full set of instructions that tells them exactly what to do. And when they follow that exact set of instructions, guess what? They get great results. It's interesting because sometimes people can say to me, well, Jess, I want to follow the instructions, but it doesn't do anything for me creatively. And I understand that. Sales actually isn't a massively creative sport until you start having conversations with people. Following instructions is actually more like Picasso starting out his art career. You know, Picasso didn't start drawing people with eyes in the sides of their heads. He started out learning about perspective and, different types of canvas and paints and lines and the rule of thirds and all the things that we're interested in with art. And then once he'd learnt the rules, he learnt how to get creative with things so that he could embrace his skill. That's what professional salespeople do once they understand the rules. It's probably one of the things that most entrepreneurs need to understand is that their sales process actually shouldn't be creative. It shouldn't be where you feel creatively satiated. It should be where you are able to replicate a clear process and be given consistent metrics so you know what is working and what isn't. That's what your sales process should be. Once you start talking to decision makers and having sales calls with them, that's where you can get creative about the solutions you're building, about the offers that you're creating, about the way you write proposals, about the work that you go on to deliver. Those should all be pieces that feel creatively fulfilling. But your actual lead generation process, the way that you book sales calls, the way that you structure out your offers, your proposals, where you think about your pricing, that should all be quite boring because it takes less headspace, because it's easier to monitor, because it's easier to replicate. Most importantly, also, following instructions gives you that confidence, and certainly gives the professional salespeople that I work with the confidence that their strategy is working. And that's because it will produce the metrics that it should, because they're doing the work that they should. So what ends up happening is that it means that they're able to identify much earlier in their sales process whether a strategy is working, whether it needs tweaking. As they become more experienced, they're able to set themselves new goals. They're able to extrapolate their own metrics. They're able to help others understand whether something is working or not. And this is where it gets interesting, because I often think that we can think sales is like a one-time thing. We learn the sales process and then we go away and we do it ourselves forever. And it's funny because most of the professional sales teams I work with, I won't just work with once. I'll work with them again in different areas, covering different topics. I'll go in and do refreshers year on year on year. And that isn't because they don't know what they're doing. It's because over time, people bend the instructions. And I see it a lot with coaching and consulting clients who have worked with me for a bit. They've become super successful, and then they'll go away and they'll do it on their own for a year, sometimes two. And I'll always get a message that says, Jess, I'm still doing the stuff, but it's not working. Can we have a call? And we'll always have a call, and we'll always go through and look at, okay, what actually has changed? And there can be a number of things. It's not even sometimes that they have the intention to change the strategy. Sometimes it's as simple as, I didn't win a deal that I thought I would, and then my confidence was knocked, and then I really needed to generate revenue. So I changed this thing and this thing and this thing to try and save the next deal so that I wouldn't lose out. And inadvertently then, they've changed the sales process. They've changed the language they've used. They've changed the attachment that they have. They've changed the way that they handle objections. They've changed the reassurance that they might give. They've changed lots of other things in very, very small ways, but that have led to big and often problematic outcomes. Like I say, sales isn't an art. Sales is a process that you have to learn and follow instructions for. And if you're somebody who has felt like you've bought strategies and that they, quote unquote, haven't worked for you, I'd think about the question that we asked ourselves right at the beginning. A, did you buy something proven? from a credible source who has the data and the training and the ability to train you? And B, did you execute following the exact instructions? Or did you just change something that you thought was really minor, that you thought wouldn't really matter? And if that's the case, then it might be that you need to revisit either the training that you did and the strategy that you have, or the level to which you followed the instructions for it. If you've enjoyed today's episode, I will be back in 2 weeks. I've got some more apps coming up. I'm really excited about them. And, just so that you know, I too am spending this afternoon revisiting some of the instructions that I set myself a year ago for different approaches and new strategies that I'll be executing over the next 6 to 9 months. If you want to join me on that journey, stick around with the podcast. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button to whichever podcast player this is on. And keep up with it. Apparently, following the instructions gets you the results. I'm going to say it. Who knew, right?